Okay, welcome to the first episode of Overthinking It. Today we're doing Ghostbusters. My guest today is Serene.
Hi.
How you doing, Serene?
Not too bad.
All right, you ready to get into this theory?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. Okay, here we go. Well, they did it. We didn't think they could, but they did it. They made a Ghostbusters reboot with an all-female cast and no connection to the original, and it didn't suck. Bravo, studio execs. Bravo. I walked out of that movie feeling a renewed love for the franchise and not cursing Kristen Wiig's name whilst running home to watch the original movie just to get the taste off of my brain, which is what I did in Star Trek Into Darkness. I literally ran home and watched Wrath of Khan immediately afterwards.
That movie was also entirely terrible, though.
It was super bad.
Let's take a movie that was good and then...
make it bad.
Just reverse all of the parts. Literally. And now they're bad.
Exactly. But this movie had good action, great chemistry between the leads, and enough laughs to keep my dad's girlfriend Patty entertained, even though it had no ties to the 1984 classic. Or was it tied? Is it possible that the remake was so completely rooted in the same universe as the beloved old film that nobody noticed? Could these new Ghostbusters actually be a product of meticulous planning on the part of the veteran team? I know it seems a little crazy, but just bear with me. What if the new Ghostbusters was an inside job? Okay, please keep bearing with me and listen to my theory, okay? The Ghostbusters continuity is separated into 4 distinct timelines consisting of various movies, comics, and video games. We will primarily be focusing on the movie universe, in which only the original movie, its sequel, 2009 video games, and per my theory, the new 2016 movie are considered in canon, although I may reference other media from time to time. Having said that, with no restraint on spoilers, hear my tale of the new Ghostbusters. The year is 1991. The Ghostbusters have just saved the world from yet another extinction-level ghost crisis. These events occurred in the aforementioned video game, at the end of which the rookie, the player's character through the entire game, is dismissed from the New York chapter because Peter Venkman claims that the team just doesn't need another member. However, they decide to put him in charge of another chapter because the Ghostbusters are expanding across the country. Mysteriously, though, Dana Barrett, Sigourney Weaver's character in the first 2 movies, is strangely absent from the game's story. This is because Miss Weaver declined an invitation to be part of the game but in real life, but I believe there's an in-universe explanation. What is that explanation? Well, 2 years prior in 1989, at the end of Ghostbusters 2, Vigo the Carpathian attempts to bind his soul into the body of Dana Barrett's baby, Oscar. Although the Ghostbusters stopped it, this horrifying reality-warping, trauma-inducing affair broke little baby Oscar's mind and soul. He would grow up mentally scarred from the event and never able to live as a regular person. A lot of this is conjecture on my part, but it fits for the theory.
Okay.
It's half story, half theory, basically, so just keep that in mind. You know, I think it all fits, though, when we get to the actual movie.
I mean, most of your theories and writing is mostly elaborate storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. I prefer it this way.
Yeah.
Okay. So Oscar would grow up mentally scarred from the event and never able to live as a regular person. This weighed heavily upon Dana, who threw herself into the study of the occult in order to rationalize what happened to her son, distract herself from her depressing reality, and possibly find a way to fix Oscar, which she would never do. She also distanced herself from the Ghostbusters, who she now saw as incompetent amateurs since she was beginning to understand the paranormal and thought they'd been nothing but brought misery into her life. As the Ghostbusters organization grew in strength and influence, so did the Paranormal Contracts Oversight Committee, PCOC, pronounced Peacock, headed by longtime rival, the ever-dickless Walter Peck. The PCOC regulated the Ghostbusters' activities and attempted to keep their work under the radar. The government believed it was in the best interest of the people to keep the supernatural as only myth in the eyes of the public, something the Ghostbusters disagreed with. Finally, in 2002, the PCOC was absorbed by Homeland Security to better oversee the Ghostbusters enterprise. Now, with unlimited power, Walter Peck and Homeland Security ordered the Ghostbusters to conglomerate and begin busting only in secret, or be forced to hang up their proton packs for good. They also brought in Dana Barrett, now the foremost paranormal scholar in the country, to help smooth over the transitional period, although she was now much stranger from her time studying. The original 4 and their staff were even offered positions as high-ranking officials in the new paranormal branch of Homeland Security. Ray and Egon accepted, with Janine Melnitz tagging along, but Venkman and Winston bowed out, distrustful of Peck and the larger government. And so it was that the original 4 went their separate ways, each being given a new identity to hide their existence. Peter became a paranormal professional debunker. Winston bought a funeral home, trying to help the dead move on the decent way. And Ray and Egon became lackeys for the government, ever fighting an uphill battle to keep their cherished Ghostbusters alive in one form or another. Nearly 15 years pass, and both Ray and Egon have become more or less phased out of the group they helped found. Seen mostly as fossils of a bygone era and with very few ghosts in need of busting, the two worn exterminators simply waste away in the laboratories provided by Homeland. That is until Egon discovers something horrifying in early 2014, strange readings he'd only ever seen once 30 years prior. Zool, the gatekeeper, was returning, which could only mean Gozer the Destroyer wouldn't be far behind. Ray was away on assignment when Egon learned of this, so he tried to alert the higher-ups, but no one would listen. When Ray returned, Egon had passed on. No one knew what killed him, but Ray wouldn't let his death stand for nothing. He died trying to warn them of something terrible, and Ray would see his work finished, but he couldn't do it alone. So he recruited them. All of them. Venkman, Winston, Dana, and even Janine united to save the world in Egon's name. The Ghostbusters were needed, but that wasn't them anymore. None of them had fought ghosts in decades, and they were old now. In '84, they'd barely managed to beat Gozer, and that was in their prime. They'd need new blood, so they came up with a plan to put together a youthful team and bring the Ghostbusters name back to New York, a town that had largely forgotten them. Part 2, the plan. And this is where we get into the actual movie. Because of their status with the government, their positions with Homeland Security, and their cover identities as ordinary citizens, the veterans would be unable to create a new team directly. Instead, they'd have to covertly influence events from afar, steering groups to become busters themselves. But where to start? Although Homeland Security had practically erased all evidence of the Ghostbusters' past and covered up any knowledge of their existence, spectral activity was again rising in New York City. Ray had already investigated these happenings and found a man named Rowan North who was amplifying the paranormal presence of the city using devices set along ley lines. He'd had Janine go undercover as a manager in the hotel Rowan worked in to keep an eye on him. Using his considerable pull with the government, Ray could have easily put a swift and decisive end to this madman's plans, but during his research, he found that Rowan had based his technology off of a book written by two scientists. Dr. Aaron Gilbert and Dr. Abby Yates reminded Ray of himself and his friends back in the good old days. He had brought this to the attention of his compatriots, and Dana revealed that she was training a disciple of her own named Dr. Jillian Holtzman under the guise of her government-mandated identity, Dr. Rebecca Gorin. Holtzman happened to work with Abby Yates, but Yates and Aaron Gilbert were no longer on speaking terms. Dana, as Rebecca Gorin, told Holtzman to convince Abby Yates to publish her book in order to reunite Abby with Aaron. With all the ghost activity in the city, they were bound to come across one together and be inspired to start busting just as Ray, Egon, and Bankman had been years before. Sure enough, they did see a ghost, and Erin was fired from her job at Columbia University. She went to work with Abby and Holtzman, who were convinced their second-rate college would fund them. I believe, though, that the very strange dean fired them all because Ray paid him to. He was abnormally rude to the women after Abby confidently announced that he'd support them wholeheartedly. But why might Ray do this, you might ask? Well, his team began exactly the same way, and the veterans needed to see if the newbies could handle starting from the bottom. After all, they beat Gozer after only a few months on the job. During these goings-on, you're having way less to say than I anticipated you would.
Well, I mean, most of this is just set up. I mean, up until that point. And really the only thing I would say is that I'd say there's very little evidence in the actual movie to suggest that Holtzman had anything to do with the book being republished. Oh,
I agree. I think it was just...
It's pretty much, was stated in the movie that Abby was just like...
Oh, shit. Did I get my fingers
It's two-part. One...
No, it's good.
Okay. One, she was broke. She's like, hey, it's a way to make a bit more money. And two, it was a way to say fuck you to her friend who just, kind of left her.
Yeah, well, I think that that's clear. It's clearly not the case. It doesn't have to be the case, but I think that you, in the theory, you could make the, I don't think, Holtzman might have had nothing to do with it, but, to get some money would be an easy way to be let's publish this book and give it to your friend, but then, it could be a calculated move to get Aaron to go talk to Abby. That's all I'm really saying here.
I mean, it's still a bit coincidental for the entire thing to be a plan, because, I mean, the setup for the team getting together is, in the movie, very based on coincidence. And unless you have like evidence to prove that there's another way other than it just being coincidence, it seems like it would be unlikely for it not only for this to be a coincidence, but also for it to be this bigger coincidence that other people were wanting to happen in the first place.
Well, most of this is coincidence, but let's keep going. During these goings on, Winston, under the guise of his alias Bill Jenkins, got his niece Patty Tolan a job on the subway system near a ley line so he and Ray could keep an eye out for Rowan. See, it's conjecture. All of it's conjecture.
But like,
I'm just gonna name.
Wouldn't the original Ghostbusters, like, after finding out that this other person had this plan to not only like make Ghost stronger by using this device thing, but that he also was planning on using it to charge the ley lines, like, wouldn't they do something more active? Because, I mean, they were very much all about, like, oh, we're going to go and save the city and we're going to do an awesome job. And even if they had, like, hit some hard times later, I don't think they would, like, just wait and hope that their plan would work as opposed to trying to do something more active. Because in the end, like, it didn't even, like, the apocalypse happened. Like, they made it okay anyway, and the new Ghostbusters were able to, like, stop the ghost. But also, like, that's pretty irresponsible. Like, I don't see those characters being the type of people who would just leave something up to chance. Like, I feel like in the earlier movies, they seemed like they'd be far more active about something. If they're like, oh, if there's an apocalypse happening, which was even the second movie, it's like, oh, another apocalypse is happening. They weren't like, oh, let's just wait and see what happens.
Let's do the let's have a discussion at the end, because I feel like if I get through all of it, then it'll be easier to talk at the end. I know that I was asking you to pipe in, but I'm like, I think it makes more sense if I just do the theory and then we talk about it afterwards. Okay. So, during these goings on, Winston, under the guise of his alias Bill Jenkins, got his niece Patty Tolan a job in the subway system near the ley lines so he and Ray could keep an eye out for Rowan. Their plan was to turn Patty onto Rowan's trail and then send her to inform the Ghostbusters to eventually become their fourth member herself. They recognized the value of having a street-smart member from Winston's time with them during their early days and wanted to give the team that same advantage. Meanwhile, Aaron, Abby, and Holtzman attempted to secure a base of operations. They're shown the fire station from the glory days, but it's nowhere near as cheap as Ray purchased it for as they renovated it over the years, making it the perfect home, but extremely expensive. They then set up shop above a Chinese food restaurant. Patty ends up seeing a ghost in the subway, planted by Rowan, and as planned is directed by Winston, Uncle Bill Jenkins, to inform the ladies now calling themselves the Department of the Metaphysical Examination. This is problematic, though, because Ray and the others need the new group to be as close to the originals as possible. That means in name and brand. So when Patty brings the ladies into the subway, a common graffiti artist happens to draw the Ghostbuster logo. It's supposedly because he's trying to show them the ghost he saw, but his painting is nothing like the ghost, and he's far too prepared. It's more likely that the artist is yet another plant from the veterans to give the new Busters their logo without directly handing it to them. After successfully overcoming their first ghost with Holtzman's proton technology that I posit she was shown how to build by Dana, the group becomes slightly infamous. Venkman leaks that they're called the Ghostbusters, but he debunks them as his Martin Hines identity to keep Homeland Security placated. Winston even supplies Patty with one of his hearses so the Ghostbusters could have their iconic car, Ecto-1. The Ghostbusters then capture their first ghost in a containment unit, using their jumpsuits, proton packs, and Ecto-1. After showing that they're capable of some proper busting, Venkman decided it was now time to meet the girls and judge their character for himself. He went to them as Martin Heiss, only to get thrown out of a window by a ghost. It's said that he was killed, but I don't believe that. We never saw his body, and Homeland Security showed up minutes later. I think that this was a stunt set up by the veterans, and they passed Venkman's test. Yes, they bickered. Yes, they let out a ghost. But Aaron stood up to Martin Heiss and showed him up the same way the originals would stand up to Walter Peck and the like. They wouldn't stand to be walked on, which is something they would need to do in order to properly bust, especially in this period, because in the following sentence I say that Homeland and the mayor's office then tell the Ghostbusters to continue their work on the down low, just as the original Ghostbusters have been told by the PCOC. It's here that the Ghostbusters realize Rowan North's plan and set out to stop him. See, Ray figured that this pudgy little idiot would make for a perfect final test to see if these new Busters could actually help in the greater fights to come. Rowan would be easy for Ray and his crew to take out. He's no Gozer the Gozerian or Vigo the Carpathian. He's just a guy. So if the new kids can't beat this guy, he'd be no help against Zuul or Gozer. And so their final confrontation comes. Rowan has ripped open a door to the ghost dimension, and the Ghostbusters rush to stop him, with the veterans watching keenly close by. Abby, Patty, and Holtzman drive to the Mercado Hotel, while Erin makes her way from uptown, trying to get the mayor to act. She attempts to catch a taxi back to the base in Chinatown, which is when Ray decides to step in himself. Time is of the essence, and he doesn't want Erin going the wrong way if it means sacrificing the mission. They've shown they can do good work, and there would be no sense in letting them lose just because Erin doesn't know that her team is already downtown. The argument could be made that Dan Aykroyd is just doing a cameo, but his dialogue would say otherwise. Erin is trying to tell him that there are ghosts everywhere and he should get out and get scared, but clearly Ray says, Class 5 golden vapors are nothing to worry about. Something almost no one outside of a Ghostbuster would have the knowledge to say. Then he announced, I don't go to Chinatown, I don't drive ghosts, and I don't drive wackos, and I ain't afraid of no ghosts. He's making a meta reference to the original source material, but he's also subtly telling Erin to face the danger like the veterans did. We know the Ray Parker Jr. song is at least somewhat canonical from the numerous times the characters referred to it in the first two films.
Sometimes shit happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you going to call?
Ray then immediately drives off, having accomplished his task of keeping Erin in the fight. Next came the problem of getting Erin her suit and her proton pack. So Venkman sent Slimer to hijack Ecto-1 and bring it to her. Slimer was a quasi-pet to the Ghostbusters in the second movie, and even more so in the cartoon series. We even know that he can drive since he drove Lewis to the museum in the climax of the sequel. If you're wondering why Lewis didn't factor into this theory, he just doesn't. Like, I love him and I love Rick Moranis, but they're not important. And they didn't show up in the movie, so. This brings us to the end. The Ghostbusters vanquish Rowan and the veterans. The Ghostbusters vanquished Rowan with the veterans watching and thoroughly impressed with Homeland Security and the audience none the wiser. The mayor and Homeland continue to deny the existence of ghosts, but the veterans' damage has been beautifully done. People know and remember now, which is important. They've even earned the fire station, and who arrives just as they move in, but Winston with a replacement hearse. Yes, he's there as Uncle Bill Jenkins to berate Patty for losing his first hearse, but he arrives immediately after they enter the fire station now that it's theirs. Also, like, did she like, Uncle, I'm moving into this fire station? Don't answer. We're going to get to that later. I've decided that we're just going to talk afterwards. I'm almost done. I'm moving in, and then he just shows up immediately afterwards. Does he have, like, a GPS in her phone? I don't know. To me, it makes more sense. If he arrives immediately after they enter the fire station now that it's theirs, almost as if he's passing the torch in secret. It's as close as the veterans can get to actually acknowledging their good work. He'd still have to pretend to be Bill Jenkins to keep up appearances for Homeland Security. Dana even makes an appearance later as Rebecca Gorin to inspect their technology and approve of their progress. I also suspect that she is the one that gave them the tapes for Patty to come across Zuul and point the Ghostbusters towards the real threat. The Ghostbusters live again thanks to the old. So that's my theory on how the Ghostbusters universe is all connected. I acknowledge that writer-director Paul Feig has outright stated that this movie exists in its own universe and therefore has its own continuity, but I definitely prefer my own version. The movie subtitle is Answer the Call. They are answering the call for new Ghostbusters both outside the movie and within. The veterans called for a new youthful team to join the fight, and they answered. It sheds a whole different light on the movie, and I personally think it's better. They're responding not only to take up the torch, but to carry on the fight. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it. What do you think?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting theory, and I think you do make a couple of really good points. But on the other hand, there's still the one major glaring plot hole of like, why don't people remember the original Ghostbusters? And I think it's too easy to say, oh, well, like they just covered it up, but like there were lots of really like big terrible disaster things, and like anything of that scale, like people still remember. And even if people were like, oh, later it's a hoax, it's definitely a hoax, like people didn't just forget that
Well,
that's a thing that happened.
I agree. And that's why when I saw the end of the movie where everyone's like, oh, I love the Ghostbusters, I was thinking that maybe that is them, the city remembering. Like that's like, oh yeah, Ghostbusters were a thing, and like I appreciate them now.
Yeah, but memory isn't something that just like you
Goes
forget
away and comes back?
and then it just comes back unless something has made that happen. And one could make the argument, oh, well, there's like, you know, maybe it's a ghost thing or maybe it's like a government thing that has like made people forget. But I don't think there's actually any evidence in the movie to support that. So at that point, like at this point, where just this movie is out, there's no evidence to suggest any reason why people might have forgotten.
I agree. I just like this so much better than a movie that doesn't have this in it. Like, just a movie that completely disregards it and says it's another universe. I like this so much that, like, I made this theory. But there is, like, I didn't just get it off of nothing. Like, they put some pieces in here that I built off of. And the reasons that I gave might not be the best. But, like, people in the Ghostbusters universe, they tend to forget things, as in the sequel, like when they very blatantly just disregard what happened 5 years earlier, and everyone's just like, yeah, whatever, ghosts, like, yeah, the Ghostbusters were a thing, but like nobody cares. It seems like a world that would forget.
Okay,
it seems
but
like a
there's
world
a difference
that would
between
just throw it away.
Between irresponsible government and like literally all of New York and possibly the entire world forgetting what must have been like the most popular talked about event for decades.
But imagine, like, it wasn't, though. Clearly, everyone was just like, man, these Ghostbusters, maybe it was a hoax. And in the movie, so many times, like, they got video evidence number of times, and people were still like, yeah, whatever, it's probably a hoax. Everybody on the internet, like, they kept making jabs at how the Ghostbusters, the trolls on the internet about the movie, they were making jabs at them, and it makes sense. Like, I think that it makes...
Okay, but even if people did just think that the Ghostbusters were faked later, like, they still would at least know what they were. And so, like, in this movie, like, the concept of a Ghostbuster is, like, completely alien until they decide to make it a thing. And now it's something that people know about. But, like, it seems like no one had even thought that that could possibly be a thing until they made it a thing.
Well, I think that... like the idea that this Ghostbusters world is a world where people easily forget. We've seen that. They easily forget in this world. They easily dismiss things. And everyone's a non-believer. Couple that with the concept of the Homeland Security trying to get rid of everything. And I think that you could get a world where nobody believes in it. And then they start to remember as time goes on. See, they don't immediately call them the Ghostbusters, but once they are called the Ghostbusters, people start to think, oh yeah, remember that other team, and then right at the end, when they save the city, that's when everyone's like, oh, I love the Ghostbusters again, we love the Ghostbusters, right? Like, and the only person that is debunking them is Venkman when he comes in, and he's like, and because he's in character, he's trying to demoralize them, he's trying to test them, and they pass his test, is what I'm trying to say, maybe. So, like, I think that it's possible. This theory is obviously not without its holes. I just still prefer it.
I mean, also, like, the inclusion of Patty at that point seems like kind of like a dumb move on their part. Because, like, as a movie, the character of Patty is great and adds a lot to their chemistry, but as a character in the plot of, like, in their universe, doesn't really do much. She's kind of there, and like they state that like, and apparently from like what other people have said, it's like she was supposed to be like the street smart who knows all of like the old hauntings and
Yeah, that's
can
what
like
they
help.
said.
But like she doesn't really do that in the movie though. There's like 2 points where they're like, oh, what is this place? And she's like, oh, it's a haunted place. I'll take you there. But like also literally the internet can do the exact same thing faster.
Yeah, but think about...
And also, like, if you're like, oh, well, they just need to have a lay person. All right, but why just one? Like, at that point, like, if you're just adding, like, lay people into the Ghostbusters team because that's going to be helpful, then, like, why still keep it up 4? Like, why not have, like, 5 or 6? Like, I feel like that would just be, like, a logical conclusion at that point if they're thinking, like, 4 was good, but now if we're going to have to, like, face this bigger threat again, like, why don't we add more people?
Well, the positive... Look, I'm going to have to tackle that in, like, 3 points here. But, okay, first, I, like, yeah, maybe Patty didn't do anything, but Winston definitely did. A number of times they needed somebody who could be down to earth, and when they were talking to the mayor at the end of the first movie, or right before the climax, nobody really knew how to talk to him except for Winston, who was like, look, this stuff is real, it's crazy, and then finally he starts to listen. Right? He proved to be useful. And there's a scene with Ray in the car, it's a fabulous scene, where he's like, have you thought that maybe this is like a biblical meaning of like the end of the world? He had a down to earth sort of feel, and it was really helpful to the team. So maybe Patty didn't do anything, but I could definitely see Winston and the others thinking he was helpful. We should get somebody like that on the team. To your points of 4, I understand that too. But as I said, in the 1991 game, they get a 5th member, and they decide they don't need one, so they get him to start another chapter. And I think that they realize that a 4-person team is the best. And I think that they're also starting to build again. So this is their first 4 team. Now, the sequel might throw out all of this, but I think right now, that idea stands up.
Still, why Patty though? Like, if they're going to all of this trouble to like specifically handpicking like these members that would make like the best results, like why get Patty? Because again, like as an actual character in the movie, like she doesn't really do much. Like, I mean, I guess she like
Winston's niece.
She like exorcises the ghost from what's her name?
Abby.
Yeah.
But she
like,
only does
also
that...
She literally just slaps her.
Also,
So,
you could also make
like,
the argument
works,
that
but,
Rowan
like,
left because he knew he could find a better host.
Yeah, that too. So, like, Patty does, like, basically nothing. So if you're going to, like, again, like, these are not careless people. In your theory, like, they're even having this super intricate, really detailed, like, plan. So, like, why would they just, like, pick some random girl, even if
It's not a
it's, like,
random girl.
related?
It's Uncle Jenkins. It's Winston's niece.
But, like, again, she's, like, clearly not actually that useful.
But she does, like, she's good in the fights. She can hold her own.
But she's like
she wants
the
to
weakest
do it
out of all of them for like every conceivable reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying that she's like that she did a lot of stuff. I'm saying that I could see why they would think that she'd be helpful.
Yeah, and I'm saying if you're going to like all of the trouble of making this incredibly detailed plan and cherry picking 4 specific people, then like wouldn't you want to make sure that all of them are that good? Like, why would you just have 3 that were like specifically really amazing and perfect at like this exact job, and then like, oh, she's the girl who's my niece.
Yeah, but I also think that they're pressed for time. Like, they don't have a lot of time to get this done. Gozer's coming back, and if they don't stop Rowan, then the veterans will have to step in and do it for them. They want them to do this, so they're like, okay, who can we get all together at the same time? Okay, we've got Holtzman and Abby who are together. We can get Aaron back with them, and Winston's like, I've got this niece we can drop, and she's pretty street smart, we can drop her in too. And I've seen her take on a fight. Like, she throws Abby around. Like, she's a big, tough woman. She can get stuff done. So I can see why they would be like, this is a group, let's put them together. There's a group of 4 right there.
I don't know. I feel like, because your entire theory is that this is like this big plan that's been in the works for a while, so why would you just leave like that one to fall through the cracks? Like, that feels like a bit of an oversight. But she's 25% of the group.
Well, like, I don't really get why you're like what about her is not good. She holds her own. She's good in everything she does. She doesn't have specific moments where she helps out. She doesn't do a lot. But I just think that she didn't get any opportunities to be useful the same way that Winston did.
I don't know. I feel like if
I think
like,
that's bad
if you're
filmmaking, not
Yeah, I mean,
not
honestly,
on the theory.
honestly, yeah, I think that is just like they should have
Bad
given that
script
character
writing.
more to do, and I think that is more on the script writing. Who knows? Maybe there's like an alternate cut somewhere where she did have like a big character moment, but the fact that she doesn't is like kind of a glaring problem with her being like a Ghostbuster in this theory. I feel because if you like in stated in the movie as it all like literally it is just chance that these four happen to come together. It's like all right. That makes sense. Like, okay, I can accept that, like, not everyone is gonna have this, like, big moment where, like, everything that, like, they were good at comes to head and they're able to show, like, this is why they're good for this. Because that's not how life works. It's like, it's how movies work sometimes, but that's not how life works. So,
Yeah,
like,
but
that
also-
not happening is like, okay, but if this was, like, an intricate plan, it's like, that feels like an oversight. Like, if everything else, like, fell into place, why would they not, like, deal more in this? Like, they're not careless people.
No, but I think they can also see the value in these sorts of people. I think they see Patty's value even if she didn't end up doing anything here. I think in the movie she didn't end up doing too much, but I think they could still see her value. And at the end, she's the one that hears Zool, right?
Yeah, but that also could have been anyone. Like, she just happened to be listening to that recording.
True, but that means that she's pulling her weight. She's doing things. She's not just sitting off at the side and doing nothing. She took the initiative to listen to these tapes and found Zool, which finally is going to lead them to the bigger fight later. I mean, I really hope they don't just throw that out in the sequel. Like, I hope that they actually tackle something bigger because of that. Or, like, there's a god that's even bigger than Gozer that Gozer worships, and, like, Zool and Gozer, and they're, like... I'm hoping that all that turns out to be something, but I don't think it's that big of a problem that she didn't end up doing.
I mean,
anything.
also, why would they not send a better receptionist than Crimson?
Because I don't think they plan on sitting a...
I mean, he was hilarious and a great addition to the movie as like an actor, but like as a character, he's like he like actively kind of hurts them more often than not.
Yeah, but I don't think that they sent Chris.
Why wouldn't they send anyone then, right? Like if they had gone to all the trouble of everything else and like bribing people, like why wouldn't they just like be like, hey, you're a decent receptionist, go help them. You know a thing or two about ghosts, you could help.
Because I feel like they weren't trying to do that too much because they can't help them too much. They have to see if they can do it on their own.
Yeah,
if they can't do it on their own, they're not going to be helpful.
Person, because like they had like even like the receptionist in the first movie was more helpful than Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, but again, you had to see if they could bust and still do. The only times they actively helped them was after they proved they could catch a ghost on their own. Like that's when after they saw that they could catch a ghost. Like at the Rock Theater. After they saw they could do that, they're finally like, oh, they can actually be effective. That's when they put a little bit more effort into it. They wanted to bring them down and see if they could climb up. They saw they did, and they're like, okay, we'll help them now. If they weren't going to do that, they would have just solved their own problem themselves and moved on to somebody else. And like been like, okay, we'll find another group that can do this even better. Or we'll put one together more hands-on, a little bit more. But remember, they can't be too hands-on. Because in my theory, they're not supposed to be doing any of this. They're supposed to be like just working for Homeland, very under the radar.
Okay, but going back to that, like why would Bill Murray's character even like fake his own death, right? Like that seems like
because Venkman's hilarious and ridiculous. He does crazy things, and if he had more things to work with, like because Ray clearly has a lot more, way more. To work with now that he's like part of Homeland Security. If he's got all this things to work with, you don't see Peter Venkman just going all out and being completely ridiculous.
Okay, but as far as Homeland Security knows, according to like your timeline, they would like he's just this guy who doesn't believe in ghosts a lot, like loudly at the TV.
They would know that it's him. They'd know that it's Peter Venkman in disguise because they put him there. That's their identity for him. They would know that that's him.
Well, then wouldn't they try to stop his plan?
They wouldn't know that he'd have a plan. Like, they wouldn't know that Ray had a plan, or that
Well, why would they help him fake his own death? I feel like there's nothing that would, like... That's not beneficial.
Because Ray helped him fake his own death, and Ray is a higher-up in Homeland Security.
Yeah, but even if you're, like, a higher-up in Homeland Security, you can't just be like, okay, we're gonna fake this guy's death. Like, people are gonna be like, okay, who is it? Why are we doing that? that's dumb, no.
Yeah, and I see hilarious scenes happening. Like, in my head, these hilarious scenes are happening where he's justifying the ridiculous things that they're doing. See, the thing is, I just want to see this movie. Like, I'm so much more interested in this movie than the movie we got. The movie we got was fun, but to me, this theory is so much better. Like, I want to see the ridiculous scene where Ray and Peter, like, convinced Homeland Security that faking his own death and walking in there and being ridiculous was important. That they had to do that. Because it was for their plan. It was like they wanted to judge them. But to them, they could have just been like, hey, I'm just going to go and, like, try and debunk these guys because we don't want them doing anything. And if I get thrown out of a window, we're going to fake my death, okay? Cool, let's go. Like, you don't see that happening? I totally see that happening.
I mean, that's also just, like, why would you just assume that you would get thrown out of a window,
Because,
right?
like, he just, like, that's how Peter Venkman rolls, man.
But that's, like, a weird thing to assume. Like,
Shit
even though
happens,
it is, like, a
and who you
weird
gonna call?
gargoyle ghost, like, the gargoyle ghost doesn't even pick anyone up when they're fighting it. Like, it doesn't. Like, the only thing it picks up is Bill Murray.
Yeah. I mean, shit happens, and who are you gonna call, right? Like, that's like Peter Venkman in a nutshell. So I think it totally works. Like, that's what he would do. He's just... It's Zool commenting on our discussion. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else to say? I think we've come to some impasses where there's just like you either believe or you don't. I believe.
I
just believe.
think it's a cool theory, and like if it was like I'd like it to be true, but I think there's just at this point not enough evidence to support it.
I agree, but stuff like Ray or stuff like Dan Aykroyd just knowing way too much about ghosts in that one scene.
Okay, I mean, I feel about this theory.
Don't
the same
take
way,
that one apart, man.
No. I feel about this theory the same way I feel about the Mass Effect 3 theory, the indoctrination theory. It's like that is an incredibly cool theory. It would have been a much better story. I would have liked to see that. It's not what happened at all. And there's like people can still comment about it, but like at the end of the day, that's not what the story was written to be, and that's not what the story was. And it would have been cool if that was. And I mean, I still like to like think about it and be like, oh man, that's a cool story. But also, I don't think that was the intention, and I don't think that there's enough evidence to actually support it.
Agreed. I agree. But there is enough information to spark the discussion.
Yeah, that I agree with.
So I definitely enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the theory, writing and thinking about the theory more because like I came up with a theory as I watched the movie.
Yeah.
I was watching it and I'm like, okay, maybe Peter's or maybe Venkman as Bill Murray as Venkman is going to test them. He's not just going to debunk them. He's going to test them as Peter Venkman. Oh my god! And then when Dan Aykroyd showed up and knew way too much about ghosts and then said, "I ain't afraid of no ghosts," I'm like, okay, this at least sparked enough for me to actually write the theory.
Yeah, I mean the movie was great. I'd give the movie probably like a 4 to 4.5 stars out of 5 for quality and entertainment value. Your theory, I would give probably like a 4 out of 5 for entertainment value, but maybe like a 2 for plausibility. Like, there's some there,
I agree.
but not enough to like really support it and let it stand up on its own.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wish the movies had done this, though. Like, I wish they would have gone this route instead. But, yeah. Anyway, we're probably just overthinking it.
Probably.
Probably. So that's this week's episode. Or this month. I haven't decided the release schedule yet. And tune in next time. I have a couple of episodes coming up. Like, I have an Anchorman discussion where is Brian Fantana mysteriously a cat sorcerer? Panther cat sorcerer? Who knows?
It's a mystery.
Are there 2 Austin Powers out there? Let's find out.
Maybe. I mean, now that you've said that, it makes me think that there might be.
There are. All right. This has been Overthinking It. I'm Jonah Simmons. And that was
Serene.
That was Serene Diamond. Good night.